You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Whitney Brim-DeForest.
Hi there.
That's a long name.
It is. My parents hyphenated it.
Now, Whitney, what do you do professionally?
So my official title is rice advisor, but essentially I am a scientist. I work with Cooperative Extension, which means that I work with farmers, and I work in rice, and my main area of research is weeds.
So when we say rice, the first thing that comes to my mind, you said rice reviewer. I immediately thought you're trying different flavors of Uncle Ben's rice.
And nope, I'm a scientist, so I'm part of the growing process. I'm out in the field.
Now, what exactly do you find fascinating about the growing process of rice?
So I actually have been working in rice, I guess, like going on about 15 or so years now, and I got into it when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. So that's how I started in rice research and rice production.
What exactly, why just rice in general, though? There's so many other crops that you could study from.
Yeah, that is true, but rice is actually one of the most important food crops in the world. It's I believe, number 5 in terms of calories consumed worldwide. So it's one of the most important crops on the planet.
Yeah, it goes to a big benefit of my Chinese food. I mean, you always get something with a side of rice onto it.
Yep. And then, about 1/5 of the total calories eaten worldwide is rice. So very, very important to many cultures.
Even though it's like very important to many cultures, it is a difficult process of growing rice, isn't it?
Yeah, so rice typically is grown in flooded conditions. So the fields are flooded up, as opposed to, like, if you think about like wheat or corn or something like that, where it's we run water across the field, but it's not flooded. The rice is one of the only crops that's grown in flooded conditions. So it is unique.
On television, you see things of like farmers with like the straw hats, and they're just basically pants rolled up in water, basically, because that's how you have to grab the crop.
Yeah, so rice, it doesn't require that to grow, but actually the reason that we grow rice in flooded conditions is because of weeds. So I'm a weed scientist, and that's kind of how I ended up working in rice. So weeds are actually suppressed by the flood, and rice. So that's why we grow rice in water for the most part. But rice can grow in the same field as like wheat or corn as well.
Now, what exactly are you trying to study about weeds if you say you're a weed scientist? Most people, when they hear weed scientist, they're going to think you're growing like pot in your closet or something.
Nope. There's a whole bunch of us, actually. So there's a Weed Science Society of America and an International Weed Science Society. So weeds are one of the most important pests in agriculture. They compete directly because they're a plant, just like the crops that we grow. So they compete directly for the things that the plants that we want to grow, directly for food and light. And so they're actually very, very important to study and to learn how to manage. So I study, I have a more of an ecology background. So I study a lot about the weeds themselves and sort of how they interact with their environment. But most of what I do now,
Weeds can literally grow anywhere when compared to a normal
they
plant. It has to
can.
have certain conditions. It seems like everyone always wants to complain about like, oh, I need to get weed killer for these crops that are growing in my driveway. And it's like, well, if they're so important, but the whole importance behind them is really trying to find ways to eliminate them and stop them from growing.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like, we can't ever completely manage weeds, but my job and the job of other scientists that work in weed science is to sort of optimize the growing conditions for the crops and sort of minimize the conditions or optimal growing conditions for the weeds. So kind of like interaction between the environment and the weeds and the crops, and kind of cool.
How much of your research actually goes into trying to find better, more I guess natural ways of reducing weeds instead of using pesticides and all these types of killers that a lot of people are starting to get worried about when it comes to genetically modified foods. Everyone's starting to, especially nowadays with this just the trend of everybody trying to eat healthy and get healthy,
Hmm.
new me, all this type of thing. They a lot of people get very weary about what's going into their food just when it comes to crops, but no one's actually looking into the actual processed food.
Yeah, well, actually, there's a ton of us that work in ag science. So the what I work for, have you heard of cooperative extension before? You know what it is?
I have not.
Okay, so cooperative extension is very unique, I guess, in terms of ag research in the world. So cooperative extension was actually established by Congress back in the late 1800s. And so there is a cooperative extension group of scientists working in every state in the United States. So we're essentially kind of like communities-based scientists. So each of us works in a particular area, a particular crop, but there's one of us serving like the major crops in each county in the United States. And it's pretty cool actually. So like any rice grower, I work in rice and wild rice. Those are my assigned crops in California. And any rice or wild rice grower in my area, the counties that I cover, can call me up at any time for free to go out to their field. And we're affiliated with land grant universities. So here in California, it's the University of California. Other states, let's see if I can remember off the top of my head. Oregon is Oregon State, but we're county-based scientists. So it's like having free research, basically, like at your fingertips.
And more of a community aspect as well too. You're involving a lot of just California in general. It seems like with just the agricultural research. Also, you're basically benefiting local farmers as well.
Yeah, so each of us works locally, but our research might be, since it's funded by the federal government, we work all of our funding, because it was an act of Congress, or most of our funding comes either through the state or the federal government. So it's all freely available information. This is through the public university system. So it's pretty unique. We're the only country on the planet that I know of that has a system like this. And yeah, we've been around for about 100 years now. Do you know 4-H? Have you heard of 4-H?
I've never heard of 4-H. You're tossing out so much on me. I'm like, I when it comes to just rice in general, though, like what interesting things have you really learned about just the rice culture in general? A lot of people don't really know this whole entire idea of what it is, besides things that they see on television, or if you see a documentary in a foreign land where, like Vietnam or something, where rice
Yeah.
and all these typical things are mostly farmed. A lot of people don't think that it's happening here.
Yeah, so actually rice is a pretty major crop in the United States as well. It's grown in California, where I am, and then it's also grown throughout most of the South. So let's see, Mississippi, I'm going to miss one of them, I think. Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, and Missouri all grow rice as well. And actually one of the first crops that was farmed in the United States when white folks came over from Europe was rice. And it was originally farmed in the Carolinas. So it's actually a very old crop in the U.S. in terms of being farmed here, and it's also a very important crop in the areas that it's grown.
Now, I know we get most of our calories from rice, considered just the American diet, but when it comes to the importance of rice, what exactly is so important when a lot of the times rice is just a bland flavor? Seems like it's just more like empty calories.
So I would say that like grains in general, rice is a grain crop, right? So do you know much about agriculture or how it started?
I don't know too much about rice agriculture.
Well, I'll just give sort of a brief like history of ag. So ag started about 10,000 years ago, roughly, when people went from hunting and gathering to farming. And it happened around about the same time, about 10,000 years ago, all over the planet. There was, I think, roughly 5 or 6 what we call centers of domestication, where certain crops were domesticated. So, plants like the crops that we eat today don't exist in nature. Right? They were selected for over time by humans, by hunters and gatherers. So rice was domesticated in China and also West Africa, two different species, but they both look very similar. They're both from the same plant family. And the reason that grain crops, there was a grain and a bean crop domesticated first in every place that they were domesticated. And if you think about it for a minute, you can kind of imagine why those crops were domesticated first. And it's because they're easy to store and they can be stored for long periods of time without going bad. You can't do the same with a fruit or a vegetable or a meat product, right? So it was.
And I'm guessing also because of costing as well. It seems like they're more cost effective when just it comes into the preservation aspect. You're getting with rice, it's a small thing, but you can grow so much of it at once, and at the idea that it's not that expensive either.
Yeah, but think about why that would be. So I could store rice seed for probably like 100 years under good conditions, and it would still be edible. But you can't do that with a banana or an apple, right? Those foods aren't storable like that.
Why are all these doomsday preppers stocking their basements with beef jerky? They should be stocking that shit with rice.
Well, yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't plant a beef jerky seed.
Oh, that's true. You can't plant a cow.
You can't plant a cow. Yeah, I mean, animals are equally, they're important to ag as well. But the reason that folks started with beans and grains was because they were easy to transport, easy to store, and they could, if you're a hunter-gatherer and there's not food available all year, you would have that during your sort of lean times. So that's why, folks domesticated those crops first. And then rice, culture is a big part of why people eat certain things. It has a lot to do with sort of what you grew up eating and what people around you are eating. And so rice has a long cultural history as well, both in West Africa and in.
It definitely symbolizes a lot of things, especially when it comes to like Latino culture or anything, especially in Asian culture as well, mostly because that's like a dominant crop over there, where over here we might have other things as well. But we started realizing instead of, I think, not maybe a few hundred years ago, that it would be easier for us to start growing this crop here, making it less of an export and having it more of something that's or less of an import, more of a something that we might be able to export or just cultivate for our own. How much land preparation does it take to, first of all, even kind of be able to create this material?
To grow rice in particular, it depends on where you're growing it and kind of how you're growing it. Here in California, we till the soil before we plant. Other places they might not till in the same way, but here we do. We till the soil. The soil that we grow it in is really a thick clay soil, and it's broken up a little bit so that the plant roots can go down into the soil easily.
Now, when it comes to just, I guess, keeping the preservation and also keeping the natural aspect of growing rice, do you see that this is a problem with the fact that we are spraying chemicals a lot to keep insects out? I think when people think genetically modified food, they think immediately it's going to be some type of.
So rice actually isn't genetically modified. There's only a few crops that are actually genetically modified, and not very many of them. So the rice isn't genetically modified. It is not a genetically modified crop in any way. I mean, it's genetically modified in that humans selected for it over time, but it's not GMO in the way that people think of GMO currently.
Now, is there a way to be able to genetically modify it, such as being able to crossbreed it or something that might have been happening?
Yeah, but when we breed crops conventionally, we actually, like, there's a person that goes through and has to move pollen to the female part of the plant, the flower. So when we do conventional breeding techniques, that's what we're doing. We're actually like crossing by hand. So it's actually a pretty cool process to see. I'm not a rice breeder, but I don't have the skills. But the breeders that do the breeding, yeah, they're doing it by hand.
Yeah, it seems like it's still a cultural practice, even the fact that we have all these devices and technology advancements that could make rice growing a hell of a lot easier, more of a factory style, it seems like.
Yeah, it's not just about so there's a lot of fear mongering and people are scared of genetically modified crops. But genetic modification is different than I think a lot of people think of it. It's just changing, genes slowly over time is the same sort of. I mean, it's the crops that we grow now look nothing like the crops that were growing before we started agriculture. So there's a lot of people are scared because they don't understand. There's a lot of misinformation going around, I think, about those terms and what they mean. So
What types of things do you see that mostly get addressed as being a problem? It seems like you said there's a lot of misconceptions on just the topic in general.
yeah, well, in the general public, yeah, I think there's not great science education in the United States, especially currently, and so a lot of people don't necessarily understand even what a gene is.
Oh, well, the shit. I mean, nobody wants to know where their food comes from. They just want to be able to eat it.
But it's really important because guess what? We all got to eat.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. This is
Every one of us has to eat.
and nobody ever wants to know wherever they get their Cheerios, where they get their apples. They just want to see the GMO or the organic label on the thing and be like, "Oh, well, it's organic, so that means I'm eating healthy." But do you understand the process where it came from? For me, I can go to a grocery store and pick up whatever, a head of lettuce or something. But I also try and find stuff that is also locally produced as well, such as side farmers that are selling their stuff by their house or something, fresh tomatoes, all these things where they can show me how they grow these things too. I mean, has anybody ever really went out and went berry picking? I mean, that's an experience in its own.
I mean, I hope people have, but I think that the thing is so like, about 100 years ago, most people worked in ag in the United States, and now about 2% of the population works in ag. So, and it's the fact that, we're able to produce so much food now that allows folks like you and me to not have to go and be farmers. So it's actually a pretty amazing and important thing. And I wish people understood more about where their food was. And I wish people actually talk to farmers and to folks that are working in ag like myself. It's very important to understand. It's not as black and white as people think it is.
Now, would you say more education towards the public or just people just finding out more about their food source, where it's coming from, the process of it all would actually establish a better connection with just the food that they're eating in general?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where like I come in. So I'm an extension scientist and I work with Cooperative Extension, and we've got folks 4-H, like I mentioned before, is a kids program. And if you live in a rural area, you've probably heard of 4-H, but if you don't, you may not have heard of it. But it's to help kids better connect with ag and science in general. And it's a federal program, so it's open to everyone. But yeah, that's where folks like me come in, with communicating with the public. We're supposed to be, out talking to schools and things like this. So that's what I do. I do a lot of outreach as a scientist.
Now, when you're teaching kids kind of like a little bit about the process of it too, and a little bit more kind of enhancing their knowledge just on where their food's coming from in general, do you see that as being a benefit to more kind of future generations as well? I guess, creating more an advocacy for more of looking down actual to what is being put into their food and what they are consuming into their bodies.
Yeah, no, I think it's important for everyone to understand about where food comes from and how food is grown and how it's really not that easy to grow food. It also helps us to respect the fact that we have people that are growing our food for us. I lived and worked in West Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer, and you know, it's very difficult to grow your own food without all the equipment and technological advances that we have here. Very, very difficult, next to impossible, right? And so the fact that we are able to just walk into a grocery store here in the United States is a huge privilege, and I don't think people fully grasp that.
Yeah, no one really has the capability or understanding, especially a lot of adults. Like even myself, I'm at fault for doing it too, because we just go into the grocery store. It's that idea of convenience. It's already there. We don't really care about, once after we grab it, we just care about how much it costs or something. But what was really fascinating for me was when I first got dived into even just gardening in general, growing my own crops
Mm-hmm.
now. I tried to do it on my own, obviously, like grow a tomato plant. And, I would care for that thing for so long. And then I would leave for like a week or something to go to my grandparents, something. Next thing you know, I'd come back, the plant's dead. I was upset. But
Yeah, and
where
it's hard, right? It's really
yeah,
hard.
it's a process. See, where my inspiration and kind of first spark of this came from was when my first grade class, we went outside and we planted a bunch of trees. We spent literally a whole week where we were just farming. We were probably doing manual labor for the school, whatever way, but it was fun for us. They gave us shovels.
Yeah.
But the idea was that we were growing crops too. We put green beans down, we put so many different things down, and eventually towards the end of the year we got to harvest them. And it was one of the most beneficial experience too, because it educated us on the process of growing our own food and what capabilities we could do if we decided to fall into it. And surprisingly, a lot of my classmates went into farming from it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for people to get out and understand how to grow food and to connect with food, and actually just to be outside. So I also teach at universities and stuff, and one of the things that we do is teach kids how to garden, so they better understand how to grow food, how to plant a seed, what it is.
What's one of the most beneficial things that you've learned kind of growing rice in general?
One of the most beneficial things. I just have a much better appreciation for farming, actually, and how important agriculture is to humanity. I don't think a lot of people think about it on a daily basis, but it's incredibly important. If there weren't, people growing our food for us, all of us would still be growing our food. And, I wouldn't get to do the things that I get to do. You wouldn't get to do the things you get to do. All these things that are possible because we're not out growing or looking for food all day. So it's
I know. I know once I started my fitness journey and everything like that, I've been going to the gym religiously for like a nut for like 7 years. So once I did the mistake, I would not recommend to people that are, trying to restrict their calories or anything. But looking at that nutrition label, once I did that, I messed my life up forever because now I constantly look at the nutrition label. But
mhm.
it's got to be crazy just to understand the process of growing food as much as you do, and especially having a kind of a respect for it as well, not only for the process of it, but also for the farmers. You probably look at food in grocery stores a hell of a lot different than the average person.
I mean, I think so. And I didn't grow up farming. I'm not from, I mean, my family a long time ago farmed, my great grandparents and stuff, but my immediate family is not a farming family. And yeah, I think it's really important to better understand and just like how many technological advances have occurred to get us to where we are today. I mean, if you think about like refrigeration and like refrigerated transport and the fact that we can get, mangoes in California in the wintertime, I mean, it's pretty incredible because those things don't last very long on a tree, right? So the system of like transporting food everywhere to different places, because it doesn't grow, not all plants grow everywhere, right? So for example, most of the nuts grown in the United States are grown here in California, 99% of them. But everyone else in the United States and the rest of the world benefits from the fact that we grow nuts here. So just lots of different things that I've learned. And yeah,
What would you say is one of the worst things that you've come across just in your research or studies or just work in general?
one of the worst things.
Yeah, like whether it was like you found out, like I know probably a lot that happens to do with a lot of research is the problem with funding as well.
Yeah, so it is hard now to find funding for research. I think partially because the general public isn't that aware of sort of how important basic research is. A lot of the stuff that we do isn't really, highly skilled or technologically advanced necessarily. I'm out playing in the mud with seeds, but it's important because all of us eat, and it's important for all of us it's important to be able to grow, for fewer of us to be able to grow food to allow the rest of us to do the things that we like to do. So yeah, research funding is a big deal, and it's getting harder, I'd say, just in general. I think probably affects all aspects of science, not just ag. So, but again, I think it's partially
Do you
because
think with more education on people?
yeah.
Well, do you think with more education on people in general that this will kind of increase your funding a little bit too? I think as long as more people are aware of what's going on around them and kind of being influenced a little bit too, especially at younger ages, if we start instilling that now and we keep that progressing into the future, we're going to have a more well-rounded society where people are starting to look at the contents of what they're consuming.
Yeah, and I mean, part of again what I do is trying to get out and talk to people of all different types. There's just not enough of us. I'm only one person, and there's only about 200 of us that work in California as extension scientists in the counties. And I mean, there's almost 30 million people in California, so it's just hard, numbers wise, to reach everybody. But I think a lot of us do our best. I have outward facing social media and stuff like that to try to engage people. And I do my best locally to talk to who I can. But yeah, I think it's incredibly important. Science is incredibly important, and getting people excited about science is incredibly important. Not just ag, but
How do you typically show somebody, like, to even get excited about it? How do you typically show somebody?
well, so I mean, I do a lot of social media stuff. I have, I don't have like a YouTube channel or something, but our organization does, and so we try through that outlet. When I go to talk to classrooms and stuff, I take rice plants, I take rice with me. I talk about the birds, I talk about the animals that called rice fields their home. So I try to get people excited in that way. But yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to folks. I like to talk. Extension scientists like to talk. So just one-on-one connection.
Where did the passion for rice even come from? Like, I can't imagine you being a little kid saying, "I want to be a weed scientist," or "I want to study rice cultivation." Like, where did this interest even spark?
So I mean, I've always loved plants and science. So that's been a long-standing love of mine, just being outside and being around nature. But I started working in rice in the Peace Corps. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer after college in Senegal, West Africa. And Senegal is a rice growing country traditionally. And so I was working with rice farmers there. And I was working more than just rice, but the group of people that I lived with, the Pulars, the women are traditionally the rice farmers. And so I connected with them a bit better than I did with the men. And so I spent most of my time working with the women rice farmers. And so that's basically where I got started in rice. But the weed science aspect of it actually came just generally from being in that sort of resource poor environment. They don't have access to pesticides. All of their weeding is done by hand, and it's incredibly labor intensive. And so I started getting interested in how could we better manage our weeds in a way that would allow people to not spend all day for the entire season outside weeding. I mean, it's really incredible. Weeding is the number one use of human labor worldwide, which is incredible to this
Yeah,
day.
because those things grow
Yeah,
everywhere.
and that's to this day. That's to this point in time. That's the number one use for human labor is weeding. So, I mean, when you think about it, it's pretty incredible that most of us in the United States don't have to do that anymore. We're not outside bending over, breaking our backs weeding.
I have a religious hatred when it comes to weeds because of the fact that poison ivy is a weed, and that messed me up for so many weeks of my life.
That's really funny.
The whole uncomfortability factor, if anybody has ever gotten poison ivy, poison oak, or whatever, and if you're not allergic to it, God bless you. But let me tell you something, rubbing that pink calamine lotion all over yourself is so uncomfortable, and it's so disgusting. It is the worst, whatever, how long it lasts. It is the worst time of your life. I was like 11 when I got it, and then I got it again when I was 16 because I camp a lot.
Mhm.
Man, they tell you don't touch your face. You're like, I have your hand on your face. You're like, I'm already in it. It's
It's too
happening.
late. Oh, that's funny. I'm sorry.
Now, I I definitely think there is an aspiration for people to want to connect with nature. I definitely think nowadays now we're seeing a lot of people look to forms of meditation and definitely trying to get out a little bit more, be more active.
Hmm.
We're going to start seeing a climb in just the amount of people that are increasing their knowledge based on just agriculture in general.
You mean you think that we will see that, or that we are seeing that?
I think we're definitely going to start seeing that. I just the fact that people are spending more time outside and more
People
time
get out
doing
and
everything. Yeah.
yeah, I hope that more people get interested in ag. I do, because I mean, I work in ag and there's not enough people to work in ag right now. there's just not enough young people that are interested in it. The average age of farmers in the U.S. is in their mid 60s. So I hope more people get excited and interested. And it is a hard life. It's not easy to be a farmer, but it is, I think, there's a lot of rewards. And also not just farming, but, people like myself that work in research, and there's lots of folks that work ag adjacent, working not just as farmers. But it's all of us got to eat. Like I keep saying, every single one of us. Doesn't matter if, you're the president or, just a regular old person. Every single one of us has to eat. So I hope that
If you go on Instagram, you can look up a food blogger. That's now a thing. That's a hashtag that has like 4 million people that follow it. And it's just people going around different eating spots and reviewing it.
Right. But all that food's got to come from somewhere, So it's I think understanding like the process of growing the food and the process of getting it from the farm to the table or to the restaurant, to the store is really, really key and important. So I hope there's more people that get excited about it.
There's also a humbleistic aspect to it too. I mean, the fact that you went and you're discovering the process of growing rice and also how crops are even cultivated into the first place is expanding your knowledge in that way. But you also went to Africa too. So what you're doing is you're expanding yourself in a culture that is the survival is the basis of that. I think especially in America here, it has become a little bit too easy to get things. And that is the whole process that we're missing out on, where we start losing our kind of, I guess, admiration for farmers, for hardworking laborers, only on the
Yeah.
aspect of that it's just so damn easy for us to get things that we don't really care where it comes from anymore. If you go to a less poverty place, such as or a more impoverished place such as like Africa, they're eating Haitian mud cookies down there. They're eating literally dirt just to keep themselves off of starvation. So the process of growing crops, it's a lot more backbreaking work. It's a lot harder work, but they have an admiration for it and a respect for it because it's something that they need to literally survive instead of us where we can just go down the street and go to a McDonald's or something.
Exactly. And I think that that's something that, I work on as an extension scientist. And, I work with farmers, people that are directly growing their food. That's my main, job is to work with the farmers. But I spend a lot of time trying to do outreach and stuff to connect people. I mean, there are people in the town that I work in right now that, there are farms literally surrounding us that don't know what a rice field is, and they think that they're driving by lakes, literally. They'll be like, oh, I drove by lakes today. I'm like, no, there's a rice field. So I try to, even in this small area, try to connect with folks just so that people get a better idea of like, yeah, right across the street from me is a rice field. It's a slow process, but I hope we can get back there as a society, better understand again how important food is.
What's one of your hopes just for agriculture in general? I mean, from just besides people just becoming more open to it and first of all caring a little bit more about the land, what's your kind of hope in general just with your work and research?
I think it's going to be important to just get more people involved in it. The climate is changing, and we're going to be dealing with more sort of extreme weather events. Just in the area that I live in, we've had we went from like the worst drought we've ever seen in 100 years for a few years to like extreme flooding, and I think we're going to continue to deal with more of those extreme weather events. We've also had fires and stuff, and that's affected the sun, which we need for all crops, right? So I think just getting more people interested and excited about it that's my hope, I guess, because we're going to need more people doing research and more people working in ag or ag adjacent. I don't think it'll be as easy in the future for not everyone to be involved in ag, I guess. I think we'll probably end up going back a little bit more to what it was before.
See, the problem is, I think when it comes to being environmentalists, all these people that, like you'll see, oh, they're just an environmentalist, and, they go crazy, like, oh, you can't wear fur, you can't do this. That's an extreme case of kind of trying to handle a problem. I think it's only because
Mm-hmm.
the world is really going downhill. And everyone likes to say things like, "Oh, if mankind was just gone off this earth, the world would heal." No, it would just stop declining. It would just stay at the rate that it's at now. There's no really recovery at this point unless we find better ways of being able to heal the earth, which really doesn't seem like we're going to figure out that anytime soon when the new iPhone 20 is going to be coming out or something. But when it comes to caring about the earth in general, what really got me interested into this was I used to watch a guy on television. Everybody knows him and everybody knows the song. His name's Bill Nye. Well, Mr. Bill Nye made a TV show for adults, and I don't know if you've seen his adult TV show. Basically,
I don't think I have actually.
he comes out with this commercial, and this commercial, it's older Bill Nye. I think his show's still going on now. But he made the commercial like last year. So
Yeah.
he comes out, he's got a little bit whiter hair than you
Okay.
used to see him when you were a kid. And he comes out with a globe and he says, "You see this? This is the earth." He grabs a fire or a torch and lights it on fire. He goes, "That's right. The earth's on fucking fire. Wake up. I taught you when you're kids. Now you're adults." I immediately have never laughed so hard in my entire life because I just had Bill Nye, the guy that I was like, "Bill, Bill, Bill, Bill." He just
Yeah, when you're a kid.
literally, he just shattered, and it spoke to me like an adult. He was connecting with me at an older age, making it seem like now I'm going to teach you some information that's really going to be up to date and really going to show you that we need to start making a change now. And
Hmm.
it's true. We need to start caring about the world a little bit more, just with the subtle things. It doesn't need to go be as drastic as making giant changes like I'm going vegan, I'm going this. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but it is also being able to reduce our carbon footprint as well.
Yeah, and I think like there has been. Oh, I guess I'll address the vegan thing. There's been a lot of talk about that lately, and I will say, like, just to put myself out there, I grew up with a vegan or in a vegan household, but I'm not currently vegan. And the reason is because animals actually have a really important role in the ecosystem, right? So when you think about like, you know, the forest, untouched forest, right? Animals play a really important role, right? And it's the same in ag. So, you know, a lot of people would like to blame, I guess, animal ag for all the ills of the world. But the animals are actually producing something, right? Which is manure. And so all those folks that want to eat organically, the manure has to come from somewhere. And we can't grow crops without some sort of soil amendment. And so we need animal manure in order to grow organic food, and to put back into the soil. And it's part of, it's animal ag is not bad. It's part of the ecosystem, right? So
It's a natural fertilization process.
right. And so it's not as cut and dry as everyone would like it to be. Going vegan isn't probably going to save the planet, to be honest, because I don't know how we will grow our crops without some sort of soil amendment. You need either chemical, which a lot of people don't like, right? Chemical fertilizers, or you need manure. So it's sort of like it's not as black and white as people would like it to be, or as cut and dry as people would like it to
Well,
seem.
it's as simple. People think that, oh, if we just go vegan, that means the earth will be saved. It's not that. What happens is we're burning the candle at both ends right now. We're literally being very extreme in the way that we eat our food. We're being very uncautious of the future. We're more about worried about the now. We're all about we need it at this moment instead of worrying about the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about changing your diet. Not everybody needs to be vegan. Not you don't even have to be vegan, but it's also about watching your consumption as well and being able to figure out what you are consuming and incorporating more healthier ways too. I'm pro like I'm a clean eater. I eat a lot of fish. I eat a lot of salads. I eat,
Mm-hmm.
all this types of stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it as well, you're allowed to eat meat. You're allowed to eat a burger. You're allowed to eat whatever, but also don't burn the candle at both ends. Overconsumption is a problem. We're having a
That's true. Yeah.
yeah, we're having a big population problem. And the fact is, that means we're going to need to produce more food. Now, the best way for us to be producing food is to have more of it. So, the way we're going to have more of it is by using genetically modified things, not only when it comes to um, plants, but when it comes to meat as well, creating bigger cows, bigger chickens, bigger eggs, all these types of things, creating bigger and bigger and bigger. When we start capitalizing so big, it increases our taste. At first, we might feel like, oh, it's too much, it's too much. Then we're going to get used to that too much to where we're going to want more and more and more and more. If we just slowly start reducing and reducing and reducing, we'll find that we're going to need a lot less than we intentionally thought.
Yeah, you mean just in general,
Yeah.
consuming like things like iPhones and clothes, and yes, you're right. I would have definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think people forget like the whole, reduce, reuse. Is it, yeah, reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Reuse and reduce are before recycle. I always try to think of it in that order. Reduce first.
What would you try and tell people out there, just to be more cautious of too? It seems like there's so many ways we can do things. I know, especially in my area, people are looking more to solar energy now. And actually, our state in Maryland is
Hmm.
actually paying people and giving them a bit of a tax cut if they're able to get solar panels installed onto their house because it helps with electricity in our area.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think those renewable energy is going to be, I think, probably the way to go in the future. Um, and actually, ag is part of that. So, methane is why people are freaking out about animal ag generally, is because of methane emissions, right? Methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon. But methane can actually be harvested from like manure lagoons and things like this. So, and there are some dairies here in California. There's a lot in Europe that actually harvest the methane gas off of their manure lagoons, and that can be used for. It's the same as it's essentially natural gas, right? So it can be used to produce electricity. So I think just like sort of thinking more out of the box and thinking, yeah, renewables are really important. There's a lot of farmland here in California that has solar panels on it. So just thinking of ways to incorporate our food system more into energy production, I think is going to be important for the future. We can't keep pulling ancient carbon out of the ground, because we have to get it back in there in order to reduce it.
I feel like a lot of the times, especially when it comes to just the environment in general and everybody being more world conscious, I think it's a
Hmm.
lot easier said than done for sure. But when it comes to,
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna get to that point, like how it's getting a little bit now. We're starting to see like, oh shit, we need to start doing things. We need to start paying attention to what's going on around us. But I feel like it's gonna get to that eventual point where it's gonna be too late, and I don't want it to ever get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of minds working on it, and I think like, um, I mean, I hope it won't ever get to that point where it's too late. I don't think it is too late, um, personally, but I'm not a climate scientist, um, but I think that there's still lots of changes that could be made, but I think it is going to have to happen like beyond just the individual level. Interestingly enough, like California is starting to think a lot more about um, energy grids and energy productions because of the fires that we've had, and the monopoly that PG&E has here. So there's a lot more talk about like how can we just redistribute our electric grid and make it smaller, do like more microgrids. So I think there'll be things that happen, because of the way that things are going, that people will start to think more outside of the box.
My thought on this in general was only because have you ever seen the Simpsons movie?
I haven't actually. I've seen the show, but not the movie.
Okay, well, the Simpsons movie, there's a giant EPA type thing. Like this little girl, Lisa Simpson, came up and tried to tell the whole town that the lake pollution was so bad that it was going to cause major downsides to just the town in general.
Okay.
Everybody was like, all right, whatever. This 12-year-old, this 13-year-old, whatever, is trying to tell us the ecosystem. Yeah, okay, just another story.
Mm-hmm.
Then she was like, you don't want the levels to be too late because once it hits to a point of too late, there's nothing we can really do. And no one really cared until one person contaminated the water. And next thing you know, it was too late. Then everybody was freaking out, rushing last minute, like, let's start being environmentally friendly. Let's build up walls around the lake, keep it safe, all these types of things. That's my thought. I think that as people, how many times does someone actually make a dietary change? Doesn't make a change into their life until it's already like, hey, sorry, man, you got diabetes. Like, well, I'll fix it. How can I change? I'll start eating healthy now. It's like, you can't.
Yeah. No, it is true. I think there is some, people, it's hard for things to change or people to change unless they are forced to. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, that's what I do is I try to encourage, farmers and people that work in farming to change their growing practices, and it is hard. But one of the things that we talk a lot about with extending information and extension is that if you have some people that are what we call early adopters, folks that are like more open to change and more willing to try things, they can actually have an influence on the people around them, their friends and family and stuff. So if you can find those individuals that are willing to change things, I think it can cause a ripple effect. So I haven't lost hope for humanity yet, but I am sort of an optimist. So
Well, I mean, like you were saying, Whitney, I mean, I think it's better to educate yourself too, especially knowing where your food comes from. I mean, the fact of just the farming process down to just even the grains that you're consuming on a daily basis. If we have a more educated society, we're going to have a turnaround in the way that the world is working as well.
yeah, I agree. And I think, ag unfortunately gets blamed for a lot of stuff because it's easy to blame it because not a lot of people work in ag, especially anymore in the US. But, like I said before, ag is really important. All of us have to eat. And so I think that, we can't do away with ag. So it has to be brought into the conversation more, I think. And, how can ag contribute to renewable energy? For example, I mean, I know a dairy here in California that powers all of its vehicles off of natural gas produced by its cows. So there are lots of ways to sort of think outside the box. People just have to be more open to it.
Think outside of the box or think outside of the blank. Hashtag shameless show plug.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. There you go.
Well, Whitney, I really appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast. I want to give you here a minute at the end also to be able to promote your content and your site so people can see your research too and maybe get a little bit more information on where their food's actually coming from and how it's grown.
Sure. So I work for the University of California Division of Ag and Natural Resources. So our website is ucanr.edu. And there's all sorts of information for everybody. So from gardeners, home gardeners, to kids, to people that are professional farmers. So there's a plethora of information out there on anything you could think of related to ag, and lots of stuff related to science. So yeah, ucanr.edu. If you'd like to know more about rice in California, our Instagram is @UCRice. And I can't remember our Facebook, but I think it's similar. So yeah, if you're interested in rice, check out UC Rice on Facebook or Instagram as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.